Good morning, everyone. How are we doing this morning, Melbourne? You excited to be here? Come on, we can do heaps better than that. Are we excited? Much better, much better. My name's Riddell. I'm a global futurist. I'm a provocateur. I'm thrilled to be here with you all this morning to start the next 2 days off talking about our future and what's happening in agriculture and technology and the intersection of all of the different parts of our world that's changing now today. Before we get into the program, though, I want to share a few housekeeping tips with you on what you should expect over the next couple of days. As we all know, tech is changing how we communicate, how we share, and how we engage with each other. And the evokeAG team here have created a whole raft of tech to be able to help you share and experience what's going on over the next 2 days. So if you haven't downloaded the evokeAG app, then I suggest you get onto the App Store now and download it, and you'll see everything that you need for the next couple of days in there. The other thing that we've got that is really unique, and it's a first for Australia, is our brain date part of the evokeAG app. This allows you to connect with like-minded people, those around you that you haven't physically met in the offline world before. You can now connect through the app, you can have dialogue, have discussions, and then arrange to meet up with them. This really is the Tinder for thinkers, as they're calling it. So many of you in here, I'm sure, are Tinder experts, so you'll have no problem at all with the Brain Date app. And it is a heaps load more authentic than anything that we've seen in the last couple of days on Married at First Sight, if you've been watching that. And it's all about collaborative thinking to change the future. So download the app, get on there, and start connecting with each other. The other part also is, please also jump onto our Wi-Fi network. The details of how to log on to that are on the screen behind me, and that'll also help you to be able to keep your connection speeds up here. The other bit is also, as I've been mentioning, technology has changed how we engage and share with each other. It would have been only a couple of years ago that I would have said, turn your phones off at an event like this, and we're not doing that at all here today. Please make sure that you share your experiences that you're having over the next couple of days on social media, whether you're on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter. Make sure you use the hashtag evokeAG on there. And everyone outside of here also wants to connect with you to find out what's going on. The other bits that I do have to run through with you are the fire exits. So in case of an emergency happening today, please take note of all the exit points that you can see on the screen behind me and the assembly areas. The emergency warning system at the Royal Exhibition Building, this building that we're in here today, employs 2 distinct tones, and I've got to try and replicate these now for you. If you hear the alert tone beep, 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 this simply means stand by for further instructions, and all wardens will move to the closest area control point and then stand by. Here we go for the next one. If you hear the evacuation tone, which is whoop, 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 then this means it's time to evacuate the building calmly, and move to the nearest fire exit and proceed to one of the evacuation assembly areas, which you can see in the red and blue areas on the screen, or also in the app on the evacuation site plan in your handbook, which again you'll be able to find through the evokeAG app. Ground floor toilets are located in the main hub near the Feed Me area, which you'll see outside there, the area to the right of where you came in this morning. And level 1 toilets are located also near Breakout 2, which you'll see a little bit later on today. Well, now you know how to connect and maximize your journey and your experience over the next couple of days here. I want you to also consider what this means for us in the future as Australia. evokeAG is truly the first event of its kind. We're really focusing on the future and how technology is changing, how we see things, how we behave, and this truly is unlike any other event that we've had here. Even with the role that I have of traveling around the world, 80% of my year is spent traveling to different countries, looking at events, looking at how we're changing as humanity. This really is one of the most exciting events that I've seen in the space of agriculture and technology, in looking at how we're driving change. Climate change is a massive thing for us as well going into the future. We know how much this has been in the media over the last 12 months, and I promise you over the next 2 years, the topics that we're going to see here over the next couple of days are going to be even more important. This is all about farm, food, and future. It's about how collaborative thinking will also change our future. Think differently, challenge your conventions, and question absolutely everything that you see here today. Explore all the problems that you've known about or you start to think, and push new ideas and help yourself to discover what the emerging trends are coming around the corner. This is an entirely new era. I promise you, over the next 3 years, the amount of innovation and change that we are going to see on planet Earth is going to shape and redefine the next 100 years of our world. This is definitely the most exciting time there has ever been to be a human being on planet Earth. And technology now sits at the very center of this. But the big thing that I talk with audiences worldwide and all the events that I'm with is technology is here to help us be more human with each other. It is not a replacement. We've got so much fear in society at the moment that tech, robots are going to replace us. We're going to have all-out war in the streets with robots. It simply isn't going to happen. Tech is here to help us make better decisions and also be more human with each other. We've got a heap of people here over the next couple of days. In fact, we've got more than 100 brilliant speakers that are going to share their ideas about what the future looks like and their insights into what's going on around the world. We've got more than 20 different nations here today in this first for Australia. And we're really setting the bar for what the future looks like. We've got people from China, we've got people from the UK, the US, Indonesia, Uganda. We've also got people here from, and also importantly, we've got people from Adelaide that have joined us here this morning. So welcome to all of you. I love going to Adelaide at least once a year to take my bottles back for a refund. So a huge welcome to all of you here today. I'd also like to make sure that we thank our partners. For an inaugural event like this, there is absolutely no doubt at all that we wouldn't have been able to do this without the partners that we've got here today. And the commitment of those partners in helping us to see the future has been huge. So I'd like to acknowledge them first of all. Our platinum partner, Elders, is our first one. Elders is part of the fabric of farming and agriculture here in Australia, and they're a key player to us in ensuring our future success. Also, our gold partners, Westpac, who support the people shaping rural and regional Australia, and also Visi, who are strong advocates for the growth and development of Australia's farming and food sector. Our strategic partners also, who have helped us build evokeAG here today, the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources, they've supported our vision right from the very start when evokeAG was just an idea more than 18 months ago. Agriculture Victoria, also a strategic partner, they've been on board with us, a key partner literally from day one. We've also got our Council of RDCs, whose collaborative commitment has made sure that our event is also so future-focused, and they've also helped to bring some of our Young Leaders program to life. And you're going to hear from some of our future young leaders a little bit later on today. Also, we've got silver partners here, Syngenta, Telstra, and Yamaha. And to all of our partners, even ones that aren't mentioned on the screens and I haven't talked about today, thank you so much for your energy, your enthusiasm, and also for your support of the event. We are honored to have you here today on this journey with us over the next couple of days, looking into the future. And thank you also for the belief in conversation. Now, the next part of our morning, I got to see this yesterday, and it truly is extraordinary and a really great way to kick off our day. And in keeping with our evokeAG philosophy of collaboration and thinking differently, we're going to kick off the event with an experience I promise you that you will remember and take away from here long after these couple of days are finished. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge welcome to Gora.
Thank you so much.
How awesome are they? I mean, we got to see them yesterday, and it really stopped all of the bumping that was going on in here, and you could hear a pin drop as they were doing that. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, a massive thank you and congrats, Ogara. So before we do kick off today, I'd like to first of all respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're here today. We pay our respect to elders past, present, and also future. And today we are meeting here on the land of the Boonwurrung, the Wathaurong, and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, to kick today off, I'd like to share with you a message from the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison.
Agriculture has long been a key pillar of the Australian economy and a cornerstone of life across regional Australia. Showing great capacity to adapt and grow in response to change, the industry's success is due to the enterprise and creativity of its people over many generations. evokeAG reflects this commitment, providing a platform for stakeholders to collaborate and build relationships that will help the sector continue to thrive. The Australian government strongly supports these aims and is also doing its part to boost efficiency, productivity and growth. We have committed over $5.7 billion for drought relief and recovery and to improve preparedness and resilience. We are also investing in better regulation and fairer taxation, planning ahead when it comes to infrastructure, investing in research and development, and helping farmers access skilled and reliable labour. We are also improving international trade by locking in better standards, providing regulatory certainty, and opening up access to new markets. Agriculture is often in the hands of the weather, and across the country, we are experiencing drought, floods, and fires. We are standing with you all the way through these disasters, and we will be there to rebuild with you. All of us in government and across the industry want to see a strong and resilient agricultural sector. I thank everyone at evokeAG for your efforts and wish you well for this year's event.
The message that I see there, and I'm always looking to see what the patterns are in any event that I'm at, and the strong one that comes out to me there is change. We all talk about the overused word of disruption, and it's been far overused in the last few years, but the big thing now that is changing our future is high-speed change. Our ability to keep up with high-speed change is what will define us in the agriculture sector and also the technology sector going ahead. And the important thing for us here, it is the intersection of humanity, technology, and agriculture that is what this event is all about. We've got a heap of speakers, as I said earlier, coming on the stage. We've got some young future leaders that will be coming on a little bit later as well. And I want us just to practice one thing here. Some of these people haven't been on a stage before. So I want you to all give every single one of them the biggest rock star welcome that you can possibly muster together when I introduce everyone. So we're going to practice that just one time here. So I'm going to introduce myself coming on stage, and we'll use that as a practice. And I want to see how well we can lift the roof off here of the Royal Exhibition Building. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chris Riddell to the stage. Brilliant. First time off. Now, our first speaker that is going to come onto the stage, and I want you to go even louder, is, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome on the stage for the first time here today, the Chair of AgriFutures Australia, Kay Hull AM.
So, it started with a thought, It then developed into a plan. But then it turned into a mission to create an international event that would showcase, inspire, connect, provoke, and elevate the importance of collaborative thinking for the future of agriculture. To showcase agriculture as a modern and dynamic rural innovation system that can deliver the results of research as real tools that farmers can use. To stage an event that will position Australia, New Zealand, and the Asia-Pacific region as active players in the international agri-food, agri-tech ecosystem, and to reinforce that we are the critical link to the Asia-Pacific's food future sustainability. To shine a bright light on Australian, New Zealand, and Asia-Pacific startups, and to show the world the brilliance of our innovation. To expose Australia, New Zealand, and the Asia-Pacific to what is happening around the world. To learn from other parts of the world that are doing so well in this space, and to ensure that our combined agricultural system is respected, is fit for the future, and it is connected to the pathways of commercialisation. Good morning, my name is Kay Hull. I am the Chair of AgriFutures Australia. Welcome to evokeAG 2019. Now, speaking of evoke, hasn't Garawa actually set the scene for our 2 days here today? His storytelling of the kingfisher who has lost his land, and he's crying for his land, and he's looking for a new home. It is emotive. Yesterday, when I came in this room, I walked through, and Garawa was doing his rehearsal. And I stood and listened, and of course, I emotionally got, sort of very upset, started to cry, and Garawa looked at me. And of course, women cry, and men do too, but Garawa looked at me, and he just put his hand to his heart and he said, "We are one." And that message, "We are one," is embodied today and for the next 2 days. So thank you to Garawa. Welcome to all of those who've travelled from all points of our vast Australian landscape. Welcome to our international trade delegations, and a huge thank you and appreciation to all of those who have organised our international trade delegations here into evokeAG. It was an amazing effort, and we thank you. My heartfelt gratitude is also extended to Austrade. The Austrade team have guided, assisted, and mentored AgriFutures Australia and have connected us to the world to enable us to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, evokeAG is more than just an event. It embodies a different way of thinking, a different way of connecting, and a different way of collaborating. Today, a unified agricultural industry from Australia, New Zealand, and the Asia-Pacific have come together to stage an event unlike any other. For the first time here in our Melbourne Royal Exhibition Building, the entire ecosystem has joined forces. Research and development corporations, farmers, startups, accelerators, researchers, universities, corporates, government, and investors all together. Over the next 2 days, you will be amazed, you will be overwhelmed, and above all, you will have an opportunity to feed your thoughts into what is required to ensure a sustainable production future. There has been much discussion across the world on the issues of climate and farming and the environment. But we're proud of the extraordinary innovation and agri-tech and research and development displays here at evokeAG that can lead the way in delivering a sustainable production together with a commitment to environmental management that will secure the productive land and water resources that will be handed to our generations to come. Our core objective of evokeAG is to encourage cooperation and collaboration that will attract the capital investment into the further development of agri-food and agri-tech across the Asia-Pacific, and to continue the development of our research into cutting-edge technology. Your attendance here today demonstrates you also have that commitment to bring agriculture to the forefront. To further develop cross-sectoral and cross-nation collaboration, to appreciate the many research and development corporations who are dedicated in delivering opportunity and real-term commercial benefits to the entire agriculture sector, to give momentum to the innovation that will ensure a vibrant, sustainable agricultural industry, and to demonstrate your belief in the future of our industry. It is now is the time for all of us to engage in the brilliance of rural industries. Our young innovators are catapulting ahead, our producers are continually open to change and development, our startups are world-class. Women are leading the way in fields once considered out of their reach. Over the next 2 days, the AgriFutures team have assembled a list of speakers for you. They are inspirational leaders from other countries and across all sectors to enable you to expand your thinking on how you can feed into this certain future. Our AgriFutures team, led by Belinda Allett, Deb van der Rijt, and together with that artistic brilliance of Peter Jack and his team at EMG, have worked tirelessly to provide you with an experience that will be inspiring, it will be valuable, but most of all, it will be memorable, and I'm really proud of their efforts. The passion to play a role in the progressive and prosperous future for all engaged in agriculture is first and foremost for all of us at AgriFutures Australia. However, we need teamwork that will join up the links to achieve our world's best practice, to understand what the global agri-tech space looks like, and to ensure that we understand the real strengths of the Asia-Pacific region into the future needs of food tech for the whole world. The first step in achieving this is to start the conversation. Staging evokeAG over the next 2 days is just the very beginning. It is now up to you, each and every one of you, to investigate, to embrace, and to discover how you can get maximum benefit from this most exciting showcase of innovation talent to be put together under one roof in this building. Investors, how are you going to expand your thinking into the future to invest in the opportunities within the Asia-Pacific region? Each of you here today are the key success to this initiative. Success is contingent on you leaving evokeAG on Wednesday evening, determined that you too will contribute to the mission by engaging, by communicating, and by collaborating within your arenas, to make commitment to play your part in delivering the vision for agriculture. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Kay. Thank you. Thanks very much, Kay, for your insights there into what's coming out in the future, not just within the next couple of days, but also within the industry. We now have a message from the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Water Resources, the Honourable David Littleproud.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to evokeAG. To all farmers, industry, government, small and big business, startups and investors, I'm honoured to welcome you here today for this game-changing event. When it launched just over a year ago, evokeAG promised to bring people together. It promised to drive collaborative thinking to change the future. I think you'll see by the end of the next 2 days, evokeAG has already delivered. In its entirety, evokeAG, the program, the topics, the speakers, the sponsors, the startups and the exhibitors provides the vehicle to gain insights from around the globe and shine a light on the great innovation already happening in Australia and the Asia-Pacific region. It is both a meeting point and a showcase, an opportunity to connect face to face, to build collaboration and to focus on our shared future. Yet evokeAG is not in itself the destination. It is not just about this event, but rather it represents the journey and showcases the conversations happening around innovation in agriculture. What has become clear in developing evokeAG is that these critical conversations must continue year-round. The need to attract and engage farmers, researchers, startups, businesses and investors. The need to build relationships, incentivise collaboration and empower leadership now and into the future neither begins nor ends with the work of evokeAG. Off the back of the work that my department and EY have already undertaken on this front, there has been lots of talk about system leadership, and it is clear that we need a platform that connects people, creates opportunities, solve real and immediate challenges and enables agriculture to innovate every day of the year. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to evokeAG, a concept of an ongoing online collaboration platform for a more connected and engaged agricultural innovation system. Over the course of the next few days, AgriFutures Australia and AgThentic will be testing the evokeAG concept. It's our vision that together evokeAG and evokeAG would provide a powerful collaborative system to support the future of rural innovation. In concept, it will provide system leadership without imposing it from above, a bottom-up, grassroots community approach to connecting people and building momentum through partnership. And it relies on engagement with you, our farmers, industry, government, RDC, small and big business, startups and investors. I encourage you to speak to the AgThentic team via Braindate meetings over the next 2 days, as this is an opportunity for you to have your say. I hope you enjoy this great event and our famous Australian hospitality, and I'm excited about the future of agri-food tech innovation and look forward to seeing how the connections forged at evokeAG shape our shared future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. One of the things that we keep hearing, we heard it from Kay earlier, we've just heard it from David now, is the different types of people that we've got here for all of you over the next couple of days. We've got industry insiders, we've got investors, we've got innovators. You'll find them through the Braindate app and also in the session that are going on in the breakout sessions and also within the marketplace that we've got out there. And when evokeAG was being put together, one of the things that the team realized was that we need to give a voice to the leaders of tomorrow. They need to be heard today. They've often got different insights to us. They see the world in a very, very different way to what we do. And importantly, they challenge our thinking in ways that we can't necessarily do ourselves. So that's how the Future Young Leaders concept was given birth to. That's how the idea came about. And it's created and supported by the Rural Research and Development Corporations, the RDC. So, in keeping with our practice that we did earlier for Kay, I'd like to welcome our first young leader to the stage, and I want you to give him an even bigger rock star welcome. It's his first time on stage here. Ladies and gentlemen, our first future young leader, Matthew Nevison.
Thank you. Sitting here today, we all know that battling a changing climate is one of the biggest challenges facing our global agricultural networks, which is why I am thrilled to be given the opportunity as a future young leader to start a new conversation about how we can view agriculture as an investment in our future. The warning signs of a changing climate are already here. All of these headlines are taken from Australian news outlets in the past 18 months alone. Statistically speaking, this is the direction that all global agricultural markets are heading in, as I'm sure our international audience members can attest to. Given these outcomes, do we need to question the sustainability of our status quo? Will this be sustainable for all the players involved? For our farmers and our agribusinesses in the room, will this be economically sustainable for you? I think it's time we analyse agricultural production with a different perspective. To find a solution, we need to effectively diagnose the problem. It's obvious that agriculture is deeply rooted in biology, with aspects of climate, of course, dictating the booms and the busts of our industries. As these two aspects are so interlinked, I propose that we need to learn to produce food in an ecosystem that has a volatile climate. Based on this, we can establish volatility as today's culprit. Looking over to the world of finance, we can see that they deal with the volatility of various assets regularly. Professionals in this field will tell you that success means to consistently overcome volatility to produce positive returns. I believe that their mission is analogous to ours. Global agriculture has to overcome climate variation consistently in order to produce enough food. So, viewing our mission through an economic lens, what would a solution look like? If your parents ever told you, don't put all your eggs in one basket, then this solution will make perfect sense to you. Economists balance the volatility, the diversity in their portfolios to overcome volatility. They apply this wisdom to use their eggs or money to invest in a series of strategic hedges. They'll invest in a diverse mix of differently behaving asset classes, such as stocks, forex, or bonds, to create a low risk-to-return ratio. I'd like to share a quote with you from Ray Dalio. He's the founder of Bridgewater Associates. Fortune magazine considers that Bridgewater is one of the most successful hedge funds in history. And Ray, he's been described as the Steve Jobs of investing. Ray says that having a few good uncorrelated return streams is better than just having one. So to relate Ray's advice back to us at agriculture, we already know that when climates are good, so is agricultural production. However, we also know that we need our agricultural assets to behave differently in order to achieve our desired outcomes. What do we do despite this contradiction? To find out, let's have a look at a cross-section of Australian agriculture. In Australia, our industries are mainly comprised of introduced species. Generally, these do not cope well with the climate conditions such as drought and high temperatures. I believe we can balance out our hypothetical scales with native species, as they're far more accustomed to our climate extremes. They are notorious for being so drought tolerant. To discuss native species, we can draw inspiration from history as we discuss the success of industry disruptors such as Facebook and Netflix. To this end, the Australian tea tree is a vanguard for native industries. It is the disruptor we can embrace. In less than 100 years, this industry has grown from a value of nothing to today, $35 million, courtesy of technology and a growing demand in the Asian market. What would Australia look like if we align our innovation, our natural environment, and our native species? What would the next 100 years look like? As a future young leader, I use my voice to ask you, how will you invest in agriculture to ensure food and farms into the future? Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Matthew. I'm always interested to see data and statistics showing us a bit of a story, and I love to see that content there. One of the questions I was having a think about, and I'd like your perspective on as a future young leader, how do you see technology being able to help us with some of our future thinking around climate change and how we'll be able to, in the future, look at how we can even adapt to being able to manipulate, control, or even shape the future of climate control?
Well, I believe that technology can bridge the cross-sectoral challenges that we have today. It can bring into play fields of engineering, economics, and really build together the broad aspect that we have as a view of agriculture.
And you brought up loads of statistics up there and data. We're swimming in data and information more, and this is a challenge for either established organizations who certainly struggle more with this space, and even for startup businesses and entrepreneurs. How do you sift through and look at what data is actually relevant to what we're doing today and choose what's the most important stuff in helping to shape your messages and your vision for the future?
Of course, I believe that data tells us the narrative of where we're heading, and we can use that as a hindsight to plan for future sustainability. And using that, how would the future look like? How can we design it so that it can battle with climate change and still produce effective results for rural industries and food security?
Thanks very much, Matthew, again.
Thanks for having
your time
me.
today. Thank you.
you.
Big round of applause. Awesome. Look, we've got a heap more speakers. Can I get my fallback content as well, please? We've got a heap more speakers coming up for you today. We've got people that have flown in also from other countries to be here with you today. The next person that I want to introduce to you is a guy called David Rosenberg. Now, David is our first keynote conversation here at evokeAG. It's proudly supported and sponsored by the Department of Primary Industry and Regional Development, and also AeroFarms is a company which is building large-scale commercial vertical farms in urban centres. In fact, they have the largest vertical farm in the world. I was reading some stories on this the other day, and Dubai is going also heavily into this space. So watch this space now, and it'll be very exciting to see what David's view on this future. And this is all about vertical thinking, how it's redefining how we live in urban areas and what food production zones will look like in the future. And also, it's about repurposing the buildings, the infrastructure that we have in these urban areas. Please welcome, all the way from the United States, the only country in the world where they think WWE is real and the moon landing is fake, all the way from the United States of America, co-founder and CEO of US-based AeroFarm, David Rosenberg.
First, hats off to evokeAG. That was a beautiful way to start off the morning with that music and this surrounding. And I hope it inspires us all as an industry that needs to innovate faster. This is an exciting time for the industry where there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening in a very fast amount of time. And to illustrate this, I just want to quickly share my story, which I think is somewhat indicative of where the industry can go. This is my fourth change the world company I've been involved in, from fintech to internet infrastructure to nanotech and now to agriculture. I'm a kid from New York City where the closest thing to ag was the Bronx Botanical Gardens. And here, getting involved in agriculture first because of appreciation of the macro tensions that our world needs to solve. That said, of the four companies that I've been involved in, two of them leading, this is by far the hardest. And it's because of one thing, and that is biology. So here, like those of us who have kids know, you have two kids in the same environment, and they grow up very different. And here, not that dissimilarly, plants, while we try and systematize growing plants and innovating in agriculture as much as possible, you do the same thing, and it's not always obvious why a plant behaves one way or the other way. So how fast we could understand what the plant is telling us and respond to it, the more successfully we're going to be. But it's very hard versus other forms of manufacturing where you just churn out widgets. You do the same thing again and again, and you know what the outcome's going to be. In agriculture and biology, it is much harder. Again, the hardest industry I've been involved in. The catalyst here, in my experience, in over 20 years innovating, in my experience, there's often a new technology that could catalyze one's industry. Here, for me, it was a diode, light-emitting diodes. And I read something called Heitz's law, similar to Moore's law, where more people have talked about the computing power improving by doubling in computing power every 2 years. Heitz's law talks about the efficiency of a diode improving by 50% every 3 years. And I realized just following Heitz's law, as LEDs become more efficient and more cost-effective, it could catalyze different industries, and one of the industries is farming. So here, plants don't need sunlight, they need spectrum. Spectrum at different intensities, at different frequencies, and appreciating as this cost curve goes down that the economics associated with indoor farming is going to improve. That my co-founder started that path in 2009. I started it in 2011, appreciating that more and more crops, the economics are going to improve. And then the other necessary feature for me in building aerofarms and figuring out where I wanted to innovate was the concept of cradle to cradle. Cradle to cradle is a philosophy that became a product certification that talks about the right nutrients and the right application, most simply breaking up the world into the biological sphere and the technological sphere, and from a design standpoint, encouraging that we design for disassembly, so the right materials and the right application, and essentially do more with less, and appreciating, again, the macro tensions that we face as humanity. How do we constantly do more with less? And that's something we're trying to always do at AeroFarms, whether it's grow a plant with less water, with less energy, keeping more product in the food system as opposed to spoils. This is a video that just gives an illustration of what we do at AeroFarms.
Who would have thought you could grow a plant in a warehouse instead of a field? Without sun, without soil. We're doing it, and we're not only doing it on an experimental level, we're doing it on a commercial level. Today we focus on leafy greens. We believe we could grow anything. Our vision is to build farms in cities all over the world to allow everyone to have access to fresh, great tasting, healthy food all year round. The fact that we could grow plants using 95% less water, 0 pesticides, as much as 390 times the productivity per square foot as a field farmer shows what technology can do. We're able to understand the plants better than anyone ever in the history of farming, and it's by the data. And this is why the relationship with Dell Technologies is so valuable. We are collecting all of these data points of what we're giving the plant. What spectrum of light, what nutrients, how do we improve quality, taste, texture? We're using data analytics and becoming better farmers. At the end of the day, it's about how do we deliver a better product to the customer.
This is AeroFarms Baby Kale. This is going to be packed the flavor of kale. The watercress had those peppery notes. The bok choy is super juicy. This is what I love about AeroFarms, is that it's like technology that's allowing people to farm better and smarter, and it makes really delicious food.
The world needs a new paradigm of how we're going to feed this planet. AeroFarms is illustrative of what technology can do to provide more with less.
So here, this was inspired by, again, these macro tensions, whether it's population growth, also appreciation that to feed our planet, we need to constantly lower our cost of goods sold to provide food, and that often is industrial ag, which is great for producing a lot of food, but it's often clumsy and leads to over-fertilizing, over-pesticizing of our fields that leads to challenges. Doesn't need to, but it's often the case. So the world's lost through chemicals coming into our soils, through taking nutrients from our farmland, 1/3 of its arable land in the last 40 years. So that, again, there are a lot of challenges going on. Some of it's policy related. In the US, often there's policies where if you don't use your water, you can lose your water. So there's often over watering our lands. And here we need to address problems holistically from very different vantage points. So droughts and Salinas, where in the US a lot of leafy greens are grown, Salinas, San Joaquin, there's been big droughts. And then there's a lot of spoilage in the food system. In leafy greens alone, it's about 60% of what comes off the farm gets spoiled. So there's a lot of waste. And here, on its fundamental level, when I started this business model of AeroFarms, I looked at it as disintermediating the supply chain, going from field farming, building the farms in cities to enable local food production at scale. Now I realize there's other benefits to vertical farming in collaboration with other partners and developing other technologies. Here are some of the other macro tensions from what I understand in Australia. Here in Melbourne, the cost of agriculture is rising faster, farm values, than residential values. So here it's pushing some of the farmers further out. Some of the other challenges in agriculture is inconsistency, year-round availability, pesticide, residue, land degradation, food waste, lack of freshness, price volatility, severe weather, shipping costs, water usage. Here, from an innovation standpoint, there's a lot of money coming into the industry that realizes, as an industry, the ag and the food industry isn't going away, so how do we invest in innovators that are solving problems? So again, back to this is a great time to innovate in this industry. And from a local food production, or from a farming production standpoint, by no means do we think vertical farming is where all crops are going to be grown. Not at all. In fact, we've only gotten the economics right for leafy greens, and we've been doing this since my co-founder since 2004. We have other farms. So our last farm, which is leafy greens, it's our 9th farm. It's about the size of this building. And we've grown about 300 different varieties of leafy greens. At Aero Farms in total, we've grown about 700 different varieties of plants. And we have farms that are growing very different types of crops. And the innovation cycles are tough. It's probably about 4 years from trying to grow a very different crop to commercializing it. I was talking to someone backstage about robotics and automation and pollination, automation and soft touch robotics. Like, how do you constantly lower capital cost, operating costs, and get the quality right? As our head of R&D always reminds me, plants are like a balloon. You squeeze it in one area and it pops up the other areas. So how do you constantly improve yields, but at the same time maintain quality is challenging. So in different geographies, it might be appropriate to grow in greenhouses in the field, and some crops in some geographies in vertical farms. And what's important is to do the right thing in the right place. More and more, I think vertical farms are going to have its place just because of Heitz's law and that lowering cost curve of diodes. Questions we ask is fresh relevant? Is consistency relevant? Is there price volatility? Or if we could change a quality of a plant, is that of benefit? And also, is pesticide free of benefit? And if the answers are there, then often there's a solution for us. We also realized that we want to go big to get the costs down to a place where we're competitive with the field. The automation is key, especially in a place like Australia, to lower the labor component. And the automation's in processing. And once one puts in automation, one wants to utilize it 24/7. You don't want to put in automation and have that utilized a few hours a day. So the growing scales in a linear way, unlike the processing. So we need big growing to utilize the automation. And we have automation in seeding, harvesting, cleaning, and packaging. But that was an important realization. We also realized that to be good farmers, we really need to combine data analytics as well as a technology company. So we have engineers that look at, well, we'll start off with plant scientists. We have plant scientists, physiologists, plant pathologists, molecular biologists that are looking at developing a specification for a plant. What does a plant want? And then they work with the engineering team how to deliver that specification. So here, imagine a specification, just take temperatures. We want a plant that's grown between 70 and 73 degrees. Here, you could solve that environmentally just by changing a thermostat. You could solve it mechanically by changing a direction of an air fan. You could solve it biologically, changing the temperature of the water at the root structure. You could solve that problem genetically by just getting different genetics that maybe want between 68 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So one has to bring a lot of different people in to solve that problem. Otherwise, we're either over-solving or under-solving that problem. And here, so the plant scientists work with mechanical engineers, structural, lighting, electrical, PLC process, industrial, design engineers constantly how do you reduce capital cost, operating costs to get this, to deliver the specification that the plant wants. And then it's the data analytics. So I showed a video that was we put together by Dell. We're working with a lot of tech companies, Dell just one of them, on how do we digitally control the farm as well as take data from the farm that ultimately makes us better farmers. So there's big standards. What we try and do at AeroFarms is constantly raise the level of performance. We have brilliant people. What I'm most proud of is the people at AeroFarms. And in terms of the industry, we have like about 1,500 resumes a month of people that want to work at AeroFarms. And I'm sure it's the same with other ag tech companies. It's, again, a great place to innovate in this space. And they're very mission-driven people that constantly hold us to higher standards, see what we could do more with less. I look at the business in terms of being successful, not just bringing expertise on the mechanical side and the biological side, but also on the operational side. And it's bringing in a lot of CPG-related people. Our head of operations was the head of operations at Dannon. Our head of production was the head of production at Pernod Ricard. Our head of engineering was the head of engineering at ConAgra. But people from the food space, a common theme that we see of what works is people from CPG and food that constantly have that mindset of how do you reduce capital cost, operating cost, and get a fast throughput to work. And then a lot in the data analytics as discussed. The automation I mentioned is key, and as we grow more products, here, if one defines success as being competitive in the field, the labor component is key, and here the robotics and automation is something we're heavily focused on. It's applying automation and robotics to different plants is some of the challenges we see. And very much we don't want to solve all problems internally. We partner a lot with players in the ag space as well as players in other fields. One of the exciting elements is the integration of machine vision and machine learning. So how we could image a plant and take information, and here we get really close to the plant as opposed to like from a satellite, but we could understand the chlorophyll and how the reactions are with light, what intensity, what frequency, how it optimizes plant growth, as well as curvature, width, height, petiole length, ratios of that stem length, color, discoloration, curvature. It's all information, and how do we take that information and again change our algorithm, our understanding, and react sooner to biology as plants sometimes respond or don't respond. We also want to bring back heirloom varieties. So I mentioned we've grown about 700 different varieties of plants, but introduce people to new varieties. Going to some of the supermarkets here in Australia, I was surprised, while they're great farmers here in Australia, there isn't that much variety in leafy greens. And I think part of the challenges as well is marketing and sales as well as operations. So do the customers want different varieties of plants? How will they respond? Also, will customers want product that might be pesticide-free? Is that a concept people would appreciate? If the economics require a slight premium, like a 20% premium, how will that fit into the market? So these are some of the questions we ask as we go to new markets. We don't just try different varieties, but just to illustrate some of the innovation, different plants are grown in different varieties. So in leafy greens, we grow in a cloth material that's made out of 100% recycled material, and it's 100% reusable. We'll also use different growth medias in different types of crops. So we've tried about 150 different growth medias to date. And all of these, you can imagine the innovation cycles. There's only so much you could compress it. And often, one of my biggest surprises was building a small farm the size of this stage is very different than the problems one needs to solve building a farm the size of this room or the farm the size of this building. And here, these non-obvious elements of challenges with the scale also challenge the innovation cycles, because once you build certain farms, there's certain legacy stuff that you just have to deal with. It's hard to just swap out technology as one realizes there might be a better way to design. We're somewhat vertically integrated. We also have a retail brand. And again, trying to communicate our message to customers. I'm always curious as to how the customer responds about how we grow. I'm happy so far that that has not been an issue, or customers, there was a big romaine recall in the US, and customers like Whole Foods, ShopRite's actually asked us to tell that story more on the front of the package than the back of the package. And we always look at where we can support the UN sustainability goals. And here, these are specific associations with several of them. And what we, again, look at mostly is how our people just push us constantly to do more with less. There's a lot of press in this industry in general, not just with aerofarms. And again, back to it's an exciting time in the industry to innovate. And it's not just LEDs, whether it's CRISPR. There are lots of different catalysts that could bring a whole lot of innovation across the whole industry. Robotics, machine vision, machine learning. And finally, I just want to leave you with the kids. Here, one of my proudest accomplishments that I was involved with here at AeroFarms is we build these farms on the other side of the tracks, if you will. And we've hired in our last farm, we have about 20 past offenders. It means people that were in prison. In the US, recidivism is a big problem where people go back, they come out of prison, and then they have a hard time assimilating back into society, and they go back. So we've hired a bunch of these people to work in our farms, and their kids, where their kids go to school, they don't eat leafy greens. Kids in a lower social economic demographic don't eat greens. And here, to the comment of defining success differently, here we put a farm in a school. This school in particular, Michelle Obama visited when she was First Lady. One of her big initiatives was childhood nutrition. And we changed behavior, got the kids to eat the greens instead of the fries, just by having more access to the crops. They were involved in the seeding, harvesting, cleaning. Anyway, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Thanks very much, David. So our next session now, which is a panel, is very much going to be looking into what the landscape of the future looks like with ag tech and also food, and what this means for us going forwards over the next few years. This is a really exciting session. We're going to see what some of the trends are, what some of those patterns are that are playing out. So before I introduce these next members, can I get my panel start to get ready to come out? The people that we've got coming out here today for our session is, just having a look through here, first of all, Isabelle Decitre. She's the founder and CEO of ID Capital, a boutique venture capitalist investment and advisory company in Singapore. Please welcome Isabelle. And also our next panel member is Stephen Saunders, who's the founder, owner, and managing director of the Plus Group, who specialize, amongst other things, in robotic developments. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a rock star welcome for Stephen Saunders. Also, our next panel member, Dr. Christine Pitt, the founder and CEO of Future Foods Company, director of Rocket Cedar, and joint venture partner in Farmers to Founders, and also who's going to facilitate the panel session this morning. Last and certainly not least, ladies and gentlemen, Craig Shapiro, who's co-founded the Blue River Group, an impact investment service firm, and also he's the co-founder of the Bridge Hub, a globally connected innovation firm, and he'll be talking to us about the future of Australian global agri-food tech in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Shapiro.
Thank you, and welcome all to the opening panel session for this amazing event of evokeAG. I'm Craig Shapiro, as you've just heard, from the Blue River Group and the Bridge Hub, and it's a pleasure to have these three great entrepreneurs and agri-food specialists from around the world here on the panel. So the theme for today is setting the scene for Australasia. Now that's a big topic for 25 minutes, but it's an important one because it will hopefully set the scene for our conversations over the next 2 days. Our MC's already introduced our panellists, and given our short time frame, I'm going to jump straight into it. On the app, I'd encourage you all to use the evokeAG app because the detailed bios of our guests are available there. So it's not by accident that our three panellists all think and act globally in their respective roles. And it's also not an accident that we've got over 200 delegates from around the world from 20 different countries. And if you look at the themes that we're trying to address over the next 2 days, it's clear why this is the case. And there's three themes that I think are important that we're going to focus on this morning. The importance of being part of the global agri-food ecosystem, the need to focus across the entire agri and food supply chain and include all of the players in that supply chain. And finally, what Australia and its neighbours must do to position themselves to be key players on the global agri-food tech stage. So with all that in mind, I think we'll jump straight into it. And Christine, if it's okay, I might start with you. And Australia, what are we doing right?
Thanks, Craig, and thank you for everyone for being here. It's really amazing to see so many people from all around the world. And I'm really excited to be able to have just a few minutes to speak about what's been happening here in Australia, and I think a lot has been happening over the last 3 years. It's truly amazing to see how far we've come in that period of time, and it's really down to a lot of the people who are in this room. But I guess if I just went quickly round what I see as the key aspects of our ecosystem that are starting to really come together, I think firstly we've got now a mature, capable group of accelerators, incubators and regional food innovation hubs starting to emerge here, and they're dedicated to working with our industry. So I think that's a great resource for us. I think our universities and research institutes such as CSIRO are really trying hard to change their own processes and practices. They're starting to become more entrepreneurial and agile, and I think programs like the CSIRO On program has got a lot for us to be thankful for there. R&D corporations, where I used to work until 12 months ago, are starting to invest in startups and are starting to understand how this form of disruptive innovation is really going to make a difference to the sectors that they serve. I was at a breakfast this morning. The Australian government has really stepped in to play a big role in this area. So Agriculture 4.0, if you haven't heard about that, I really encourage you to get on the website and see what's happening there in terms of attracting investment. I think corporates are starting to really understand the role that they play. So there's some big tech companies in the room, such as Bosch, Yamaha, Hitachi, Telstra, etc. They're wanting to invest in our sector, and so I think we really can grasp that with both hands. And then I think sort of finally there's some evidence of collaboration, and I know that's a big theme. So I can see evidence of collaborating between Australia and New Zealand. There's some robotic work that's been done in both meat and horticulture there. There's starting to be an understanding of our players here that we need to get out into the big world, and there's a lot of universities, CSIRO, accelerators such as Rocket Seed are investors from Australia now in Singapore. So I think we're really starting to get it. And, Kay said this morning we're aspiring to lead the world in this space, and I think we've got all the good, strong base for that.
Great. You just mentioned Singapore, so I think that's a good segue to you, Isabelle. Welcome. You've had an interesting journey into the agri and food tech sector, coming from France and the luxury goods sector, ended up in Singapore. We hear about Asia a lot, but Asia is somewhat a generic term. So maybe you can just help us think a little bit more deeply about what the Asian opportunity really is in terms of Australia feeding into the region that's so close to us here.
It's a very good question. That's a question we had to address for ourselves. When we started our business, we realized that as much as we wanted to focus on Asia Pacific is very wide. Where shall we start? Where do we end? We started with a remit of, say, about 15 countries. Then we realized that we can be relevant in 11 countries of the region. And as of today, we know that we will have a deeper focus, meaning also more overheads, in about 6 of them. When it comes to your various situation, I cannot tell in a very generic manner, but I can share some, I would say, common sense experience and maybe a few pointers on what Singapore can offer, what the other countries can offer. So Singapore comes across as the easiest place to do business in. I hope you'll trust me for expressing something which is completely unbiased. It's by far the only country where things can be so simple. If you will, I would take the comparison of growing a business in a greenhouse. It's well sheltered, well protected. Singapore can be very deliberate in its effort to foster the agri-tech, food-tech ecosystem, as they have been recently. And if you fit the strategy of the country, the government agency can go out of their way to support you. But the first thing is that it needs to make good business sense for your business. So Singapore as a place to address the Asian opportunity is definitely great. More than this, yes, absolutely. If your technology, if your sector is a sector of relevance for the country, food tech is definitely a very strong sector and counting in Singapore. In agri-tech, it's probably a bit more narrow, but I would say there are two very obvious pockets where the country is a very, very good hub to expand. First, aquaculture, and second, indoor farming. So beyond Singapore, any other country I can think of in Asia will come with much more complexity, any. And the question is, where shall you start? You know, moving to the other extreme, China is the obvious second country everybody wants to address and crack. Is it easy? No, it's easy for nobody. I would say here, play by your strengths. Think of where you're good at, think of where you're having some good connection, some good understanding of the market and the landscape. If, for instance, you have a very good and trusted Thai partner, it can make your Thai strategy. A second point is also some basic sanity check. And in regards to agri and food businesses, I would say regulation, pricing. Think of the fact that in Asia, unfortunately, regulations are very much a by-country thing. And you need to be aware of how your product or solution are going to be regulated to not be hopeful on how much and how quickly you can develop the business. Pricing, where many solutions fall flat, is on price. It's a very, very competitive environment. Just take the aquaculture industry as an example. The pockets of expertise are definitely in the salmon industry, mostly in Norway and in Chile. Why most of the solutions do not work in the region? It's not just a matter of species, it's a matter of pricing and I would say business models as a whole. So opportunities are very wide. I would also say, depending on your investors, this might steer your business development in a specific direction. But you can reverse the proposition. Depending on where you want to go, you might be willing to select your investors accordingly.
Great, okay. I've got a few questions, so I'll come back to you on that, including what the Singapore's government is doing to help drive the ecosystem in your area, so I'll come back. But Steve, you're a unique proposition because you are a grower, you're an entrepreneur, you're an investor, you're an innovator, and that's a skill that not many people have, and that's driven some of your incredible success. So can you explain to us how you've been able to do that from New Zealand and why New Zealand has been a great enabler for you to deliver your successful stories, particularly around the robotics?
Yeah. Thanks, Craig. Look, I think the genesis really comes that New Zealand is an export-orientated country. We don't have a domestic market. So we've always had this thing about we have to be globally facing, we have to be at the premium end of whatever we produce. And also, I guess from a New Zealand perspective, the primary sector or the ag sector is the largest contributor to GDP for New Zealand. So with that, there's always been a very deep science system around the primary sector or the ag sector out in New Zealand with Crown Research Institutes, universities, been very focused in that space for a long time. And then I guess for me is having ownership right across the value chain from proprietary varieties to owning orchards to post-harvest has really been able to look at asking that question to continue to compete on the global stage. What are those challenges that we actually have in our supply chains? And not thinking about today or tomorrow, but actually looking 5 years and 10 years ahead. And I guess that drove me to be thinking, where do I need to start to invest to solve some of these problems into the future? And then tapping into that really great New Zealand ecosystem of talent and understanding across a range of technologies. Secondly, we're seeing that now the tech sector is the second largest contributor in terms of GDP to New Zealand. So that's driving a whole new piece of the equation as well, where through the government agencies like Callaghan Innovation, tech incubators, there's a lot of work going into really promoting tech and technology and entrepreneurs. So fusing all those together was a fantastic opportunity to really solve some of those longer term problems that I can see. And obviously for me, one of the big ones was labour. And that's what sort of drove us to thinking about automation and how we solve some of these labour issues through to connected data all the way through the value chain. And we're now seeing the fruits of a government that's now focused about value rather than volume. We're seeing the emergence of groups like Agritech New Zealand coming to the fold, being supported by the government agencies, really starting to put ag at the forefront. I think we've been very outward-looking on our produce and our opportunity, but we've been very inward with our innovation. And some of the reasons for that have been New Zealanders are really good at adopting innovation on the orchards internally, but we've been really crap at globalising that technology or taking that opportunity to go global. But you're starting to see that change happening now with venture capital and corporates coming in and starting to see investment into some of the New Zealand technologies and starting to see us more and more on the global stage.
Great. So, Christine, we've heard some interesting aspects from the offshore guests. What are some of the natural strengths here in Australia that we should really be focusing on in terms of working more closely with our regional partners like New Zealand and Singapore and the broader Asian region?
Yeah, look, I think in addition to some of those ecosystem elements that I spoke about to start with, starting to give us a really good base, I think our natural strengths relate to our industry itself. So we've got one of the most diverse agri-food and fibre sectors in the world. We've got many climatic zones, many different species, very different sectors within it. So we're a really great place for people to come and actually trial their technology, and I think we can really start to think about how do we promote that as a strength. We've got producers and other parts of the value chain who are innovative, who are interested, who want to get involved, and so I think that's also a strength that we should be thinking about. How do we bring that together? I think we've got very generous support from our government and active both at state and federal levels. I think there's probably some things we need to do to bring that also into a more coherent maybe program of work. But once again, people coming to Australia, investors coming to Australia can look to get some support there and to be able to co-invest rather than just have to take all the risks themselves. I think our universities and research groups are world-renowned for the quality and the diversity of the technology that they can bring to bear. And then I think our proximity to probably the fastest-growing market in the world, and I think we share these strengths with our neighbours in New Zealand too. Is we're an outward-focused, from an export point of view, maybe not to quite the same degree, but certainly our understanding, I think, of Asian consumers and the Asian market presents us with a lot of strengths and possibilities to build on.
Okay, so you just touched on government, so I might come back to you, Isabelle. There was a big announcement recently from the Singapore government about seeds capital. So they've just allocated Singapore $90 million to help grow and accelerate the agri and food tech sector in Singapore, and handed out licenses, including to yourself, so congratulations, to help catalyse the sector there. What else is the Singapore government doing to really drive the sector? I mean, money is the loudest way of acting, but how else are you interacting with them?
The government in Singapore is doing a lot to support this sector. I would say the buzzwords would be more like catalyzing and accelerating. So catalyzing is playing its role as a very small country, but a country which is a testament to the fact that small countries can really make a difference. Accelerating, why? Because the people here in Singapore and the government is very aware that agriculture, food technologies, startup businesses, they require patient capital. patient capital is not always very easy to get. So how do you create the good incentives for people to be willing to get in that domain without, and this is very important, substituting yourself to their business decisions? There is this big sentence, I would say, that you hear every once in a while in Singapore: it needs to make good business sense. So you've mentioned before the co-investment schemes that has been announced a month ago, and we are very, very proud to be one of the 7 entities that have been selected. We are not the only ones. I think most of the other 6 entities are here, by the way. Hey, hello, friends. It's great because it's creating the right incentive. They're deliberately playing their role as enablers, nudging private entities to go in the direction that is very sensible. And why is it a sensible direction for Singapore? I mean, it's a sensible direction for all countries. We are here to talk about Australia, but there is not one country that can forget that eating is a basic need, and it's important for absolutely everybody. And for those who tend to believe that, okay, food is one thing, I get it, it's close to me, I can relate to it, but farming is a more distant activity, eating is an agricultural act. So it does matter to everybody, and it should matter more. That's why I'm very happy to be here today.
Great. Steve, what I want to sort of delve into a little bit more here, because we're trying to build collaboration. That word is going to be used a lot over the next couple of days. But what have you been doing in a collaboration sense with Australia?
Yeah, good question. I think we're a little bit the opposite New Zealand and Australia. So I think we've probably been more outward looking, but internal in terms of innovation. And we've lacked capital to really grow that innovation out in New Zealand. So capital has been one of the challenges. I look at Australia, I think you're probably a little bit more inward focused because you service a lot of your own large market with innovation, but you've also got a lot of capital. And I think there's a lot of work to be done between the science systems to open up a lot more in terms of the way they interact. Between New Zealand and Australia, I think New Zealand's probably quite guilty of being a little bit protective of its science, not, a little bit maybe nervous of collaborating with other science groups in a more positive way. And I think there needs to be a lot more connection with the commercial side of the agri sector. I think that the challenges I always have is that a lot of these programs get driven by industry groups or get driven by the science areas, as opposed to actually the people that, the commercial people that are really driving the production and have the real need and the real understanding of the problems you're actually trying to solve in the value chain. Because too much of this, the technology being developed is quite singular. Trying to solve one little piece, whereas I think there's got to be a lot more work around the whole of value chain and how all that technology's actually got to connect to be effective. Just solving one piece can create a whole lot of bottlenecks in through the whole chain. Or, you've got 100 people trying to solve a sensor problem, 100 people trying to solve a data platform problem. And, at the end of the day, farmers don't want to have 10 different apps and 50 different applications. They actually want life to be quite simple to help them do that. So I think there's this challenge of how do you look at more collaboration, partnerships, collective thinking around solving the big issues collaboratively actually right across the value chain.
Yeah. So Christine, Steve's touched on some aspects about the Australian system. We've been asked to ask some of the harder questions here over the next couple of days. What do you see as some of the critical limitations within our Australian ecosystem which is holding us back? I mean, Steve talked about inward looking. You've mentioned it. Is it that? What other factors are you think potentially holding us back?
I think we share some of the same problems that, and I'm sure it's not just Australia and New Zealand. So I think there's definitely fragmentation along the value chain. I think sometimes some of our institutional structures, even the R&D corporations themselves, are not necessarily helping that. So there tends to be a narrower focus on either on-farm, off-farm or whatever. And as Steve's just said, I think if you're working in the ag and food tech space, you really need to be looking at how can you solve that as a significant problem. How do you connect the parts of the value chain. So I think that's definitely a limitation still here in Australia. Whilst I'm very appreciative of government support in terms of funding, I think one of the other structural things that we need to think about is making sure that our funding and investment systems are not encouraging too much internal competition instead of collaboration. I think that's an unintended consequence of some of the programs, but I think it's a real one that we need to start thinking about. I think you touched on the investment community themselves maybe needing to think about how, or maybe Isabelle did, thinking about how does the investment community really start to work with agri-food. I don't think we can just pick up Silicon Valley VC models and dump them here and expect them to work. So I see that as a bit of a structural opportunity maybe rather than a limitation. But I guess in addition to structural limitations in Australia, I definitely still see a bit of a mindset limitation. I think we're a little bit too complacent. We think that, you know, we're sitting in a perfect world here. We've got clean, green, safe, and doesn't everyone want to buy that? But I don't think we can afford that complacency anymore. I think we're behind New Zealand in terms of building capabilities. One of the things that I've been really impressed at when I went to New Zealand was something called the Tohono movement, where, you know, the whole country now speaks from a design thinking perspective. They understand acceleration and lean startup and all those sorts of methodologies. That's definitely not the case here in Australia. So I think there are some mindset things. And I think the other thing that constantly amazes me is to hear is, and I'm not sure if it's the same in your experience, Steve, but there's still this perception that investing in startups is the riskiest thing you can do. Whereas I think, you know, focusing solely on what you've been doing for the last 30 years is probably the riskiest thing that you can do. We really need to start to step outside our existing paradigms and understand where we need to be.
Great. And Isabelle, we can talk about the Anzac spirit here. As the neutral observer, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of and the comparison between the Australian and New Zealand ecosystem? And be bold, don't hold back.
For people like me, I believe for foreign investors who are neither from one of your countries, similarities are dominant versus differences. I can drill down and highlight the differences, but for me, the notion of, you know, product of provenance, premium quality, commanding a premium in prices, large-scale farming, and also the human capital, the type of journeys of people in this business, whether it's an inherited business or if it's a startup business, I would say I see many points of comparison. If you ask me where I see Australia and New Zealand in the next 10 years, without having a crystal ball, I would say the only thing I see, the only missing element I see between where you are today and what it takes to be perceived as a center of excellence is the critical mass. You have all the ingredients. You have the human capital, you have very good universities, you have this passion for technology, you have entrepreneurial people, you have the countries which are just amazing. You have everything but the critical mass. And without pointing on my country, France, I would say think of France, who recently emerged as a country hosting about 400 agri-tech startups. 3 years back, I can tell you, you had never heard of it. You knew there were some data points, but it was very, very scattered. The initiative, supported by a very good branding, helped them emerge, and now they're recognized for this agri-tech segment. Australia and New Zealand can very much do the same. But again, my point is, it's a matter of critical mass.
Okay, good. So, I mean, we've talked about some of the limitations, but there is some really good stuff happening in terms of collaboration between Australia and New Zealand and Asia and the rest of the world. So, Christine, maybe you can just touch on some of the work that you've been doing, because you're outwardly focused on Singapore, and Singapore is clearly a growing base. So maybe you could just share with us some of the things you're doing and why you see Singapore as well as an opportunity.
Well, I also see New Zealand as a great place to collaborate as well. So when I was in the red meat industry, we formed a very strategic partnership with a New Zealand company called Scott Technology to build what is really the world's leading automation robotics for red meat processing. So, I think, we can do great things if we work together. I think Isabelle's already told us about the value of working in Singapore. So the company that I'm involved with, Decitre, is looking at a joint venture with a fund in Singapore. We're hoping to get Singapore government support to establish an accelerated program there for the reasons that she's already elaborated. It is a great place. It's a central place. It's where you can be truly global, I believe. Yep.
Right. And Steve, I want to. This will probably be one of our last questions because we're running out of time. But I want to talk about some of the global partnerships you've established and the critical one with Yamaha. Really interesting that you've come from an ag background and now you've got a company that's more known for motorbikes and for marine craft, and you formed this incredible partnership and they've put $10 million into Robotics Plus. So maybe just some thoughts from you on how you've been approaching your partnerships around the world over the last few years.
Yeah, I guess for me it's actually to enable our vision to solve my own value chain issues internally in New Zealand is really about the need to be able to actually scale that technology on a global stage to actually solve my own internal problem because New Zealand's not scalable. And a good friend of mine said, if you want to be part of the global ecosystem, you need to go and spend time in the ecosystem, just be part of it. So I just started going to every ag tech conference in the USA, and it was there I met the Yamaha Venture Fund, and I met George Kellerman, and we just got chatting about things. And over a progression of 1 or 2 years, George come through and said, well, look, Yamaha's been looking at opportunities, and they saw agriculture as a real opportunity for the future. Like a lot of big companies today, technologies everywhere are disrupting big companies as well. So big companies are actually also looking at where future opportunities are. And Yamaha does have affiliation, a connection with land. They have motorbikes, they have ATVs. It's a very deep cultural company. And so George one day just said, well, this is what we're thinking. And I said, oh, you better have a look at what we're doing. And next thing we know, we're having a great conversation with Yamaha. And it's really a great partner. It's not only was it investment, but it was also a partnership about how we work together to look at how we can solve some of the requirements we're going to need for automation and components for agriculture. So we were there, I guess we're their experiment in terms of the first major sort of investment they made in this space in an early stage company and also having a partnership. But they've just been a fantastic relationship and really opened doors. And then in terms of some of the other areas on global partnerships is like our robotic apple packers. You've got to be sensible to say we're a startup company. To go and replicate sales and service in countries and integrate technology into other people's systems is actually really, really difficult. So if you don't think about good collaborations and partnerships, it's really hard to scale. So in the US, we partnered with the likes of Van Doren, who do 70% of the installs in apple pack houses. They could integrate our apple packing technology into a bigger processing system. They've got all the grower relationships, they understand their growers inside out, and they have the service teams to service our technology. So it just makes really sense that partnerships and collaborations are really key to being able to go global.
Great. Well, sadly our time is almost up. I know we did receive some questions from the audience via the app, and we just haven't had time to get around to that. So what I'd do is I'd encourage any of you who have sent some questions through, or any of you in the crowd who would like to continue a dialogue with our panellists, to reach out to them either in person or via the app, because they're really interested in meeting as many people as possible here. So we'll have to leave it there. I hope that our panellists have helped provide you all with some thoughts around what we should be thinking about when it comes to the conversation over the next couple of days. It's abundantly clear that the opportunity is right before us here in the Asia-Pacific region, and in particular for Australia, and what we can do to really leverage ourselves to become a key player in the global agri-tech sector. I think the key message here, it's personal relationships. It's up to us, all of us, to make it happen. So many thanks to AgriFutures for being bold enough to put on this event. And many thanks to our panellists, Christine, Steve and Isabelle, for their insights this morning. I'll pass back to Steve. Chris, thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks to the panel, Isabelle, Stephen, Christine, and Craig for a great discussion. We've got morning break now over in there. Go and try some ant candy and some crickets, and we'll see you back after that session.